Hello everyone. I am Lino. I was born and raised in China. There is something about China that many people outside the country find very confusing. If you read Chinese social media, you will constantly see people mocking Western economies. They say things like, Europe only grows at 1%. The United States grows at 2%. These countries are declining. And then they proudly point out that China used to grow at 8%, sometimes even 10%. But here's the strange part. The same people who laugh at Western growth rates are also the people working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, struggling with high housing prices, expensive education, and intense job competition. So the real question is, if GDP growth is so amazing, why does life feel so exhausting for so many people? To understand this, you have to understand one thing about China. GDP is not just an economic indicator. It is a political performance score. In China, local officials are judged heavily by how fast their region's GDP grows. If a city's GDP grows faster, the officials in charge look successful. If growth slows down, their political career may slow down too. So naturally, every local government asks the same question. What is the fastest way to increase GDP? And the answer is simple. Build things. Lots of things. Highways, bridges, airports, high-speed rail, entire new districts full of apartment buildings. Why? Because construction is the easiest way to inflate GDP numbers. If the government spends $10 billion building something, that $10 billion immediately appears in the GDP statistics. Instant growth. Instant political achievement. Now compare that to something like improving healthcare. Imagine spending the same $10 billion on hospitals, doctors, or public health systems. Those improvements might take years to show results. And the GDP impact might be relatively small. So if you are a local official whose promotion depends on GDP numbers, the choice is obvious. You build another industrial park, another residential complex, another highway, even if the previous ones are not fully used yet. This is one of the reasons China's economy became heavily dependent on two sectors, real estate and infrastructure. For more than 20 years, this model worked. Real estate development created massive demand for steel, cement, glass, furniture, appliances, and construction labor. Local governments sold land and earned huge revenue. Developers built apartments and created GDP. Banks issued loans and expanded credit. For a while, everyone looked like a winner. But eventually the bill arrives. Today China has entire cities full of empty apartments. Millions of housing units sitting unused. Yet young people still say housing is unaffordable. Think about how strange that is. Too many homes, yet still too expensive to live. This is what happens when an economy prioritizes numbers over people. Meanwhile, Chinese internet users often laugh at Europe for having low economic growth. But they rarely ask a simple question. What if slower growth is actually a choice? In many developed countries, people work fewer hours. They have longer vacations, stronger labor protections, more social welfare. All of these things can reduce economic growth slightly, but they improve quality of life. So imagine two societies. In one society, people work extremely long hours, housing costs half their lifetime income, and competition starts in kindergarten. But the GDP grows fast. In the other society, growth is slower, but people have more free time, lower stress, and stronger social safety nets. Which society is actually more successful? This is the fundamental problem with obsessing over GDP. GDP measures economic activity. It does not measure human well-being. If a city demolishes an old neighborhood and builds luxury apartments nobody can afford, GDP goes up. If people get sick and spend huge amounts on medical treatment, GDP goes up. If people work overtime constantly, GDP goes up. But does that necessarily mean people are living better lives? Not always. Of course, economic growth is still important. China's rapid growth over the last 40 years lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. That achievement is real. But when a country becomes the world's second largest economy, the question should change. Instead of asking, how fast can we grow? The more important question becomes, who is the growth actually for? Is it for statistics, for political careers, or for the people who actually live in the country? Right now, China is entering a new economic stage. Real estate is slowing down. Infrastructure investment is reaching limits. The easy GDP growth is disappearing. So the next challenge is not simply how to keep the numbers high. The real challenge is something much harder. How do you improve people's lives even when growth slows down? Because sooner or later, every country faces this moment. The moment when the obsession with growth collides with the reality of human life. And maybe one day, when people in China see a country growing at only 1 or 2%, they won't laugh anymore. They might ask a different question instead. What if the goal of an economy is not to grow forever, but to help people live better lives? If you enjoyed this discussion, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.